Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. So as you are all aware of, we had started with the digestive system. Okay, so we have covered the general overview of digestive system, and in the last lecture we have also started with the first part of the gastrointestinal tract, that is mouth. Okay, so basically the digestive system is divided into two types of organs, the gastrointestinal tract and the accessory digestive organs. So we had started with the first part, that is the mouth. Okay, also apart from that we have covered some of the accessory digestive organs also, that is the teeth and the tongue. Okay, so also we have covered the salivary glands, different types of salivary glands, and saliva, what is the composition and function of each component of the saliva. Okay, so in today's lecture we shall cover the further parts of the GI tract, that is the pharynx, esophagus and the stomach. So these three parts we shall cover in the today's lecture. So as we have seen that the food which is ingested in the gastrointestinal tract through the mouth, which is the entry point, so further it will travel in the forward direction always. From mouth the food will move into the pharynx, from pharynx it will go into the esophagus, then to the stomach, then small intestine and the large intestine. Okay, and in the meantime the accessory digestive organs will help in the mechanical as well as chemical digestion of the food as it passes through the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so we shall cover the structure and functions of the next three parts of the gastrointestinal tract. So we'll start with the first one, that is the pharynx, which is the next part. Okay, so from mouth the food will move into the pharynx. Okay, now this particular part, pharynx, it's actually a funnel shaped tube which is extending from the internal nares. Internal nares is actually the part of the nose. Okay, we'll be studying this in detail in the respiratory system. Okay, so this particular part, pharynx, it actually belongs to both the system, that is the respiratory system as well as the digestive system. Okay, so partly it will form the structures of the digestive system, and as a whole it forms the part of the respiratory system also. Okay, so we'll be covering this pharynx in detail in the respiratory system also. Okay, so over here we'll just see the parts which are involved in the digestive system. Okay, now basically this pharynx, it extends from the internal nares, as I have told you, up to the esophagus. Okay, and anteriorly it will extend up to the larynx, which is the next part of the respiratory system. Okay, so basically this pharynx is composed of skeletal muscle and it is lined by the mucous membrane, and it is divided into three parts. Okay, the superior part is known as the nasopharynx, the middle portion is known as the oropharynx, and the inferior part is known as the laryngopharynx. Okay, so the names make it very clear with which organ it is associated with. Okay, so nasopharynx, obviously it is associated with the nose. Oropharynx, it is associated with the oral cavity, and laryngopharynx, it is associated with the larynx, it is connected. So it tells you with which part it is in connection. Okay, now out of these three parts, okay, nasopharynx, it's exclusively the part of the respiratory system. Okay, so it's involved only in the respiration, and the oropharynx and the laryngopharynx, of course they are the part of the respiratory system also, but both of these, that is the oropharynx and the laryngopharynx, they have digestive as well as respiratory function. So it's of course a part of respiratory system, but at the same time it is also a part of digestive system. Okay, so entire pharynx is not the part of digestive system. Only the middle and the inferior part, that is the oropharynx and the laryngopharynx, are the part of digestive system. Okay, whereas nasopharynx, it is only associated with the respiration, only the part of the respiratory system. The food will not enter the nasopharynx. In fact, if it enters, then it will create inconvenience to the patient. It will show certain reflex actions like coughing and all, if the food accidentally enters into the nasopharynx. We will see why it does not enter. Usually when you are swallowing something, usually the food does not enter into the nasopharynx. We will come to it why exactly it is not happening. Okay, so now when the food is swallowed, it is passed from the mouth into the oropharynx. It will first enter into the oropharynx and then into the laryngopharynx. And the muscular contractions of these particular areas will help in pushing the food from the pharynx into the next part of the digestive system, that is the esophagus, and from here it will move into the stomach very quickly. Okay, now let us see what is exactly the location of this pharynx or the different parts of this pharynx. This particular picture actually it is taken from the respiratory system. Okay, so here you can see that a lot of details of the nasal cavity are shown over here. Okay, whereas what we are concerned with is the digestive system. Okay, so this is the oral cavity which is shown over here. This is the mouth, this is the oral cavity, this is your tongue. Okay, so this is oral cavity proper. This is the hard palate, soft palate, uvula, which is hanging conical muscular portion from the edge of the soft palate, if you can recall this. And this is the opening of the oral cavity into the pharynx, that is fauces. If you can recall all this which we have covered in the last lecture, that is the mouth. Okay, so from here begins your oropharynx. So this particular portion, funnel like structure, is the pharynx, this entire portion, and it is basically divided into three parts. Okay, that is the nasopharynx, the middle portion is the oropharynx, and the last portion is the laryngopharynx. Now why it is known as nasopharynx is because it is associated with the nasal cavity. This portion is known as oropharynx because it is associated with the oral cavity, and the last part is known as laryngopharynx because it is associated with the larynx. This is the next part of your respiratory system. Okay, so these are the three main parts into which the pharynx is divided into. And if you can remember what I had told you about the soft palate, it forms a partition in between the nasopharynx and the oral cavity, right? So it prevents the food from entering into the nasopharynx. So when you are swallowing something, when the food is traveling from the mouth into the oropharynx, this soft palate and uvula, it will move in the upward direction, and the pharynx, it will be widened so that the food particles, the bolus of the food, it will enter into the oropharynx, and it is closed off by this soft palate and the uvula. They will move in the upward direction so that the food will not move into the nasopharynx. So whatever food or the bolus which is moving from the oral cavity into the pharynx, it will enter first into the oropharynx, and from here it will move into the laryngopharynx. So laryngopharynx, posteriorly it is opening into the esophagus. This is the esophagus, which is the next part. As you can see, it is lying posterior to the trachea. Okay, next to the larynx is the trachea, the next part of the respiratory system. So just posterior to the trachea lies the esophagus, and it lies anterior to your vertebral column. This is your vertebral column. So it's just lying anterior to the vertebral column. This is the esophagus into which the laryngopharynx is opening. So from here the food will move into the esophagus. Okay, of course we will see how the swallowing of the food is done, okay, and what is the mechanism which is involved, wherein the food moves from the mouth to the pharynx and from pharynx into the esophagus and into the stomach. How exactly it is traveling, what are the different phases involved, that also we will cover in detail, okay, but a little later. Okay, so let's move on to the next part, that is the esophagus. So we have covered the next part. After the mouth is the pharynx. Oropharynx and laryngopharynx are associated with the digestive system, and from here, from the laryngopharynx, the food will move into the esophagus, which is the next part. Okay, now this esophagus, it's the actual meaning of this word is eating gullet. So this is actually a collapsible muscular tube which is round about 25 centimeter long, and it lies posterior to the trachea, as we have seen. Okay, so this is the location of the esophagus. So from here, this is your pharynx, and from here begins the esophagus. So it will move downwards, okay, through the inferior aspects of your neck, and it will enter into the mediastinum over here in this region, okay, anterior to the vertebral column, as I have shown you in the earlier diagram. Okay, so it is moving downwards. Then as it moves downwards, it pierces the diaphragm. Now this is the diaphragm. Actually this is a picture showing your respiratory system. Okay, just posterior to this trachea travels your esophagus downwards, and it pierces this diaphragm. Now what is this diaphragm? Diaphragm, actually it is a respiratory muscle. It's a skeletal muscle. It's actually a respiratory muscle. It helps in respiration. We will come to the role of diaphragm exactly in the respiratory system. We will not talk about much about the diaphragm in this particular chapter, but just keep in mind that this esophagus, as it travels downwards, it pierces this diaphragm, and it crosses this diaphragm through an opening, and that opening in this diaphragm is known as esophageal hiatus. So this is the opening through which the esophagus, it will cross this diaphragm and it will attach to the stomach. Stomach lies just inferior to this diaphragm, okay, where exactly the esophagus will end. Okay, so this is to do with the structure and the location of the esophagus. Now coming to the histology of the esophagus. So here onwards, for all the further organs, we shall consider the anatomy as well as the histology part also. Okay, now histology part almost we have covered in general. We have seen in the earlier lecture, in the first introductory lecture, in an overview of digestive system, we have covered about the layers of the gastrointestinal tract, right? So there I had discussed about all the 4 layers. There are 4 layers in the wall of the gastrointestinal tract throughout the GIT. The same 4 layers will be present with some minor changes according to the part. Okay, so according to which part it is, there might be some minor changes in the 4 layers of the gastrointestinal tract, the wall of the gastrointestinal tract. The type of muscles may be different, the type of epithelial tissue might be different, the composition of the muscles may be different. Okay, so let us consider the histology part of the esophagus. So obviously there will be 4 different layers over here. The 4 different layers, if you can recall, the innermost layer which is associated with the lumen. This is the lumen of the esophagus. This is the transverse plane which is shown over here. So the lumen of the esophagus is in contact with the first layer, that is known as the mucosa. So these are the 3 basic layers of the mucosa. Usually the epithelium, it consists of the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Lamina propria, it comprises of areolar connective tissue, and muscularis mucosae, it comprises of the smooth muscle. And near the stomach, Okay, so at the end of the esophagus, the mucosa of the esophagus also contains some mucus glands which produce the mucus. Okay, and this role of the stratified squamous epithelium. Now, why these non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium are present over here? That's because mainly the function of this particular type of epithelium is the protection against the abrasion. Now, what is the function of esophagus? It will convey the food from the pharynx towards the stomach. So, food will be moving through this small pipe-like structure, right? So, you have seen how much is the size of the esophagus. Okay, so within such a lumen, the large amounts of food will be passing through. Okay, so this particular layer of stratified squamous epithelium, it will protect against the abrasion and wear and tear from the food particles which are being swallowed. Okay, so this to do with the mucosa. Then the next layer is the submucosa, this one. Okay, so submucosa usually consists of the areolar connective tissue, the blood vessels and the mucus glands. Then the third layer is the muscularis. So muscularis consists of the muscles. Okay, and the type of muscles, again, it may vary from region to region throughout the GI tract. Even the layers or the thickness of the layer may also be vary depending upon which part it is. Okay, so if you consider the muscularis of the esophagus, the superior third, that is, if you divide the esophagus in three equal parts, the superior part, that is the uppermost part of that esophagus, it comprises of the skeletal muscle mainly. The middle portion, it comprises of both the skeletal muscles as well as smooth muscles. Whereas the last part, inferior third part, it comprises only of the smooth muscles. Okay, so composition of the muscularis is varying within this single part, that is esophagus. Upper part consists of skeletal muscle, middle portion comprises of skeletal as well as smooth muscle, and the lower portion comprises of only the smooth muscles. Okay, now at the end of this particular esophagus, this is esophagus, so you can see over here a bolus of food is moving downwards, right, towards your stomach. This is the stomach. Okay. Now at the end of the esophagus, the muscularis layer, it forms slightly more prominent layer, okay, and it forms two sphincters at each end. Okay, at the upper end as well as at the lower end, two sphincters are formed by this muscularis, the muscles which are present in the muscularis layer. Okay. Now these sphincters are known as upper esophageal sphincter and lower esophageal sphincter. These are popularly known as UVS and LES. These are the accepted short form. Okay, so what is the function of these sphincters? Now, usually these sphincters regulate the movement of food. Okay, so obviously the upper esophageal sphincter, where it will be present at the junction of the laryngopharynx and the esophagus in the starting part. Upper esophageal sphincter will be present, whereas lower esophageal sphincter, it is present over here at the junction of esophagus and the stomach. So what will be the function of these sphincters? They will regulate the movement of food. So the upper esophageal sphincter, it will regulate the movement of food from pharynx into the esophagus, whereas the lower esophageal sphincter, it will regulate the movement of food from the esophagus into the stomach. So that's the function of the two sphincters, the upper esophageal sphincter and the lower esophageal sphincters, which are formed by the muscularis layer. Okay, then coming to the outermost layer or the superficial layer of the esophagus, it is known as adventitia. Here, this one, this is your muscularis. Okay, muscularis again comprises of circular muscles, inner circular layer and the outer longitudinal layer, as we have seen in the introduction part, and the outermost layer is known as adventitia. Now usually the outermost layer, it is called as serosa, right? That's what we have seen. Mucosa, submucosa, muscularis and serosa. But here in case of esophagus, it is known as adventitia. It is not known as serosa. Now why it is so is because in this particular layer, usually what we have seen in the serosa, what it is composed of? It is composed of areolar connective tissue and a layer of epithelial tissue. Correct? But in this case, in case of esophagus, the outermost layer, the serosa of the esophagus, it comprises only of the areolar connective tissue. The outer covering of the epithelial layer, squamous epithelial layer, is absent, which is known as mesothelium, if you can remember. The outer single layer epithelial layer, it is called as mesothelium. So this mesothelium is absent in the esophagus. This outermost layer, it comprises only of areolar connective tissue, and that's why it is known as adventitia. Okay, so this particular adventitia, it merges with the connective tissue. These connective tissue will merge with the connective tissue of the surrounding structures in the mediastinum, where exactly the esophagus is passing. Okay, so what is the function of adventitia? Of course, the protection as well as attachment of the esophagus to the surrounding structure. Then coming to the physiology of the esophagus. So what is the function of esophagus now? Esophagus, the main function is to secrete the mucus and transport the food into the stomach. So whatever mucus, a small amount of mucus it is secreting, it will help in lubrication so that the food passes through easily, and the main function is to transport the food from the laryngopharynx, that is the pharynx, to the stomach. However, this particular part does not produce any digestive enzymes, so digestion is not at all occurring in the esophagus. Also the speed at which the food is passing through the esophagus is very fast, so that there is no chance of any process of digestion or any process of absorption being taking place in this particular region of the GI tract. Okay, now with this, let us cover this small part known as deglutition, okay, which is associated with the physiology of the pharynx and the esophagus. Okay, now deglutition. What is the meaning of deglutition? Deglutition or swallowing. This is the movement of food from the mouth into the stomach. Okay, so the process by which the movement of food, it takes place from the mouth into the stomach. That process is known as swallowing or deglutition. Okay, now deglutition is aided by the saliva which is secreted in the mouth, even the mucus which is produced. Okay, and it involves these three main organs, that is mouth, pharynx and the esophagus. These are associated with this particular function, deglutition or swallowing. Now let us see what are the different stages of this deglutition. Okay, basically it occurs in three different stages. The voluntary stage, in which the bolus is passed into the oropharynx. From the oral cavity it moves into the oropharynx. The second phase is the pharyngeal stage, which is the involuntary passage of involuntary minded. Okay, this is voluntary, that is, it is under your control. Whenever you want, you will swallow the food, right? Okay, but the further passage, once it moves into the oropharynx, the further passage, it is the involuntary process, that is not under your control. Once it moves into the pharynx, further it will be taken care of by the involuntary processes. Okay, that is the pharyngeal stage and the esophageal stage. Now the pharyngeal stage, as it clearly signifies, it is the involuntary passage of the bolus through the pharynx into the esophagus. And the third stage, that is esophageal stage, obviously this is again the involuntary passage of bolus through the esophagus into the stomach. So this particular stage involves the peristaltic movement. Peristalsis actually starts from this particular stage. Okay, now let us see how exactly this particular movement is taking place. Okay, so this is the first stage, that is a voluntary stage. So your bolus of food is present in the oral cavity now. So as you are swallowing, the first stage, that is a voluntary stage, will occur and the bolus will move from oral cavity, it will pass into the oropharynx. So as it moves further downwards, this soft palate and the uvula, they are moving upwards, so that the nasopharynx, the opening of the nasopharynx is totally closed. As you can see over here, as the food has moved downwards, the soft palate, it has moved upwards, right, superiorly, and uvula also has moved backwards, so that this nasopharynx, okay, it is totally closed down. Okay, then the next stage is the pharyngeal stage. So here the food will, or the bolus will travel through the oropharynx, laryngopharynx, and it will enter into the esophagus. So this is your first part of the esophagus, where exactly the bolus is entering now. So this is the pharyngeal stage and it is involuntary in nature. Then the third stage is the esophageal stage. So once the food is inside the esophagus, the further movement of this bolus, it is taken care of by this process of peristalsis. Now the peristalsis is the process wherein the smooth muscles in the muscularis, okay, remember the muscularis layer, it is comprised of two types of layers of smooth muscles, the circular muscles, the inner layer which is circular muscles, and the outer layer which comprises of the longitudinal muscles. Now there is a reason why these muscles are placed in this particular fashion. Inner layer is the circularly placed muscle and the outer layer is the longitudinally placed muscles. That's because they help in the process of peristalsis. Okay, now how exactly is the bolus moving further? Why it is moving further? Why it is not going in the backward direction? That's because of the differential and the synchronized contraction and relaxation phase of these muscles at the different areas. So wherever the bolus is present, superior to that, the muscularis will be relaxed, but just above this bolus, the circular muscles will be in the contracted phase, so that almost this esophagus is closed down, so that the bolus is not moving in the backward direction, but it will start moving in the forward direction, because simultaneously the longitudinal muscles in this region are also contracting. So they are exerting a pressure on this bolus so that it will move only in the forward direction, and in the further down the muscularis is relaxed. So this is the reason why the bolus is moving in the forward direction, and here LES is also relaxed so that the bolus easily moves into the stomach. So this is the act of deglutition or swallowing. Usually it takes place in a very short span of time. Okay, liquids are swallowed within say 1 second or something like that. If it is a solid bolus which is present, it may take around about 4 to 8 seconds for it to pass from the oral cavity to the stomach. Okay, so within a few seconds the food will pass into the stomach. So that's the reason why no process of digestion or absorption takes place in these regions. Okay, that is the pharynx and the esophagus. Okay, then moving towards the next part, that is the stomach. So now the food has entered the next part of the gastrointestinal tract, that is stomach. Okay, so basically this particular organ, it's a J-shaped enlargement of the gastrointestinal tract, okay, just inferior to the diaphragm into the abdominal cavity. Okay, so it's a J-shaped enlargement. Okay, so it's not the same diameter as the esophagus. Okay, so it's the enlargement, it is distended organ, and it is further distensible when more and more food enters into the stomach. Okay, so usually this stomach, it connects the esophagus to the duodenum, which is the first part of the intestine. Okay, so it's a middle portion which will connect the esophagus with the duodenum. Okay, now both of these are the tube-like structure, but in between station is little bit enlargement. Now why there is this enlargement? And the reason why this particular organ is enlarged and it is quite distensible is because the meals, it can be eaten much more quickly then it can be digested by the intestines. Okay, so the process of digestion and absorption, it takes a lot of time. Okay, it's a slow process, a little bit slow process. So imagine if the stomach was not there, what would have happened? There would have been incomplete digestion and incomplete absorption of the nutrients. So that's why this particular enlargement of the GI tract is provided. So it acts as a mixing chamber and it acts as a reservoir for holding the food. So you are eating it at a very faster rate, but digestion takes place very slowly. So this particular reservoir, it holds the food temporarily, and at an appropriate intervals it will slowly push the food. A certain amount of ingested food, it is forced into the first portion of your small intestine, that is the duodenum, in small quantities at certain intervals. Okay, so it mainly acts as a temporary storage for it to allow the food which is passed into the intestine to be properly digested and the nutrients to be properly absorbed. Okay, now coming to the position and the size of the stomach. Okay, usually it is changing continuously. Okay, because what we have seen, the location of the stomach, it is located just inferior to the diaphragm, right? And diaphragm, it's actually a respiratory muscle. Constantly this diaphragm is moving upwards and downwards as you inhale the air. Okay, why inhalation takes place? Because diaphragm becomes flat. Actually it's a dome shaped structure, it becomes flat, it moves downwards, so that the pressure inside your thoracic cavity changes and inhalation takes place. Of course, we'll cover this process of respiration in detail under the respiratory system. We're not to bother about it right now, but just keep in mind that the stomach is associated with the diaphragm. It's just located just inferior to the diaphragm. So as the diaphragm moves downwards and upwards during the inhalation and exhalation respectively, the stomach also is pushed and pulled downwards and upwards along with the diaphragm. Okay, so it's constantly changing its position. And as far as size is concerned, when it is empty, it is about the size of a large sausage. Okay, but it is quite distensible. Okay, so it is the most distensible part of the gastrointestinal tract, so that the very large amount of food can be accommodated. Okay, and apart from storage, the digestion of certain types of food also takes place in the stomach. Okay, so it's not only acting as a reservoir and a mixing chamber, but it is the organ where digestion also takes place of the starches, the triglycerides, okay, which has already started in the mouth, it continues in the stomach. Also the digestion of the protein begins in the stomach, and the semi-solid bolus, okay, which comes to the stomach, it is converted into a liquid. Not only that, not only digestion, but some degree of absorption also takes place in the stomach. Okay, so these are the various functions of stomach. Now coming to the anatomy of the stomach, exactly which are the different parts into which it is divided into. Okay, so we have seen the location as well as the size and shape of the stomach. So as you can see over here, this is the esophagus. So this is the LES, which is actually the part where the esophagus ends, and this is what the part from which the stomach will start. So it's roughly a J-shaped organ, as you can see, and it is divided into 4 main regions. That is the cardia, fundus, body and the pyloric part. These are the 4 different parts into which the stomach is divided into. Okay, so cardia, which is the first part, as you can see over here, this one. These dotted lines, this shows the demarcation of the different parts of the stomach or the different regions of the stomach, as you can see. So first portion is cardia, which surrounds the superior opening of the stomach. Okay, so exactly where the esophagus is opening into the stomach, that particular portion is known as cardia. Then the next portion is the fundus. Fundus, it is the rounded portion which is superior to and it lies towards the left hand side of the cardia. As you can see over here, this is the cardia, so it is lying towards the left hand side, your left hand side. Okay, here you can see it is towards the right hand side, but usually when it is located within your body, it is located towards the left hand side and superior to the cardia. And the next portion is the body. So most of the stomach forms the body. So body lies inferior to the fundus, okay, and is the large central portion of the stomach. Okay, this portion, it is extended from here till here. Okay, then the next portion, the last part, is the pyloric part. Now this pyloric part again is divided into 3 regions. The first region is the pyloric antrum, this one. Pyloric antrum connects to the next part, that is the pyloric canal. This is the pyloric canal. Okay, and the last part is known as the pylorus. Okay, so in this pylorus region, which is the last part which connects the stomach with the first part of the small intestine, that is the duodenum. So from here the small intestine is starting. So the last part of the stomach which connects with the first part of the small intestine, it is known as pylorus. And in this region these pyloric sphincters are present, which is actually regulating the movement of food from the stomach into the duodenum. Okay, so now when the stomach is empty, the mucosa of the stomach, it actually is present in the form of large folds. These folds are known as rugae. As you can see over here, there are small wrinkles which you can see over here, right? So rugae means wrinkles. So these are the large folds of the mucosa which is present over here in the form of folds, and these folds are also visible with the unaided eye. It's not that you need a microscope to visualize this particular rugae. You can see it with a naked eye also. Okay, so as I've told you about the pyloric sphincters also, it communicates with the duodenum. So it regulates the passage of food from stomach into the duodenum. Okay, now apart from this, the curvature of the stomach, these are also named differently. Now this particular concave medial border of the stomach, this is called as the lesser curvature, whereas the convex lateral border, it is known as greater curvature. Okay, so this is the actual picture of the stomach. As you can see, the rugae which are clearly visible. Okay, this is an empty stomach. Okay, this is the fundus, cardia, body and the pyloric end, lesser curvature and the greater curvature. Okay, now coming to the histology of the stomach. Okay, so we have seen the anatomy of the stomach. Now coming to the histology of the stomach. Let us see what are those different types of cells and types of muscles with which are composed of. Okay, so the same 4 layers will be present in this particular part also, obviously: mucosa, submucosa, muscularis and serosa. Now over here it is serosa, not adventitia. Okay, so coming to the first part, that is the mucosa. Okay. Now mucosa again is made up of 3 layers. A layer of epithelial cells, lamina propria, and the muscularis mucosa. Okay, so the innermost layer, which is in contact with the lumen or the food of the stomach, which is present in the stomach. So the innermost layer, it comprises of a single layer of epithelial cells. Now the type of epithelial cells located over here is simple columnar epithelial cells, and these are called as surface mucous cells. Okay, here surface mucous cells. So you can see over here there is a single layer of epithelial cells over here, these. Okay, and the next layer is the lamina propria. Obviously it is composed of the areolar connective tissue, here, this one. And you can see that blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, nerves are entering in this particular region. And the third layer of this mucosa is muscularis mucosae, which is comprised of the smooth muscle. This is the one. But the speciality of this mucosa, as you can see that the structure is slightly different, right? It is not a continuous layer which is seen over here. Okay, so the epithelial cells of the mucosa, these are extending downwards in the lamina. Actually this is the lamina propria, right? But what is happening over here? Your epithelial cells, these are extending inwards, right, inside the lamina propria. This is the lamina propria actually. But what is happening? The epithelial cells are extending inwards. It is entering inside the lamina propria. Okay, so they form small columns of secretory cells called as gastric glands. Interior to this lamina propria lie small columns which are lined by certain secretory cells. Different types of secretory cells are present. Of course, we will cover them in detail a little later. So these small columns, these are known as gastric glands. These extensions down into the lamina propria. Okay, and several gastric glands, they open into narrow channels known as the gastric pits. Okay, so these depressions, as you can see in the mucosa, these are known as gastric pits, and inside these gastric pits lies your gastric glands, which are lined by different types of secretory cells. Now whatever secretions are secreted by these cells, it will first enter into this gastric pit, and from here it will enter into the lumen of the stomach. Okay, now let us see what are those different types of cells which are present in the gastric glands. Okay, so gastric glands, these are the ones. Okay, so these gastric glands, these are lined by 3 types of exocrine gland cells. Okay, remember the glands, exocrine and endocrine, which we had seen in the introduction. Exocrine glands usually secrete their secretions directly via some ducts at the place where it is supposed to act. Whereas endocrine glands are the ones which do not have any duct. They will secrete their secretions or hormones directly into the bloodstream, and blood will carry it to the distant site of action. Okay, so this gastric glands, it comprises 3 types of exocrine gland cells. These are mucous neck cells, chief cells, and parietal cells. Okay, so we will see one by one each type of cells and what are the secretions which they produce. Now remember the surface mucous cells, these columnar epithelial cells. So these, along with one more type of mucous cells, that is the mucous neck cells, which are present in the gastric gland. These are located over here, mucous neck cell at the neck of the gastric glands. Okay, both of these, as the name implies, they secrete the mucus. Okay, then the next type of cell, that is parietal cells. These are the ones which are located over here. Parietal cells, they produce intrinsic factor, which is required for absorption of vitamin B12 and hydrochloric acid. Acid is secreted in the stomach, right? So it is produced by the parietal cells. Then the chief cells, which is the next type of cells, they secrete mainly the pepsinogen, which is a protein digesting enzyme, and gastric lipase, which is the lipid digesting enzyme. Okay. So together the secretions from the mucus, parietal and chief cell, they comprise of the gastric juice, and a total of 2 to 3 liters of gastric juice is secreted per day. Okay, so collectively all these types of cells, all these 4 types of cells, they produce gastric juice which helps in the digestion of the food. Apart from that, gastric glands also contain one more type of cells. Now this is the enteroendocrine cell. The first 3 type, mucous neck cell, parietal cell, chief cell, these are exocrine gland cells. Whereas G cells, these are enteroendocrine cells. So they mainly are present in the pyloric antrum and they secrete a hormone called gastrin, which is released in the bloodstream. It is not released over here in the lumen of the stomach. Okay. Then coming to the next layer, that is submucosa. It is composed of the areolar connective tissue. This is the one. Okay. So it consists of the several blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, nerves and all that. Then the next layer is the muscularis. It has 3 layers of smooth muscles now. Usually we have seen that there are 2 layers in the esophagus, but here there are 3 layers of smooth muscle. The outer layer is longitudinal. This one you can see. So this is the length of your GI tract. So these muscles are placed longitudinally. Middle layer is circular. So it is located circularly. And the innermost layer is oblique. They are located cross. Okay. So these are the 3 layers of the muscularis of the stomach. Then the outermost layer is the serosa. Okay. Serosa. This is the one. Serosa, it comprises of the areolar connective tissue and simple squamous epithelium, that is mesothelium, which is absent in case of esophagus, but it is present over here. That's why it is known as serosa. Okay, so serosa, it covers the stomach. So it's a part, it is known as visceral peritoneum. Okay, and the outer layer, it is double layer structure, right? Peritoneum. Okay, so it's the visceral peritoneum which is covering the stomach. This is the stomach. Okay, so one layer is covering the stomach, that is known as visceral peritoneum, and outer layer is known as parietal peritoneum. Okay, so this particular serosa, it actually forms the fold of peritoneum. Okay, towards the lesser curvature of the stomach, this particular fold, it is known as lesser omentum, as we have seen earlier also in the introduction. And the greater curvature of the stomach, this side, from here the serosa fold extend downwards and it is known as greater omentum. Okay, so this is to do with the anatomy and physiology of the 3 parts: the pharynx, esophagus and the stomach. This is the reference. Thank you for watching.